This, by the way, is science. Welcome to the 11th Dimension was the last of the three-part series, the one I was the most interested in. In mathematics, the only way to account for vast quantities of unaccounted or unseen cosmic stuff is within an 11-dimension universe. Scientists has always been puzzled that there isn't, where did all this stuff go in the Big Bang? They can only account for about 35% of it. The other 65% is missing. So the dark matter that's in space, which you're calling black space or dark matter, is holding the universe together. And scientists are saying that the only way that can be kept together is with an 11-dimension universe.
Can I say something about that real quick?
Absolutely.
You know, the thing is though also is like if you look at our sun, it's burning, it's on fire, that's why we can see it. And there's a lot of matter out there that's not on fire. I mean, I know they call it dark matter, but I think there's, you know, the fact that there's just a lot of matter that's not burning. I mean, I don't know, that's the way I see it.
I think it's beyond that.
Well, there is dimensional stuff too, but...
We know that the universe is comprised of particles that are actually penetrating through this Earth at this time. And in Sudbury, Ontario, they've got a deep, deep pit where they're trying to collect these particles that have got to go through nickel, iron, and things that are trying to capture these small particles that exist that are traveling through space at all times. There are many dark spots in the universe. A black hole is black, but there's definitely stuff in a black hole. A black hole, they're now starting to understand, are usually at the center of a galaxy. There can be black holes scattered throughout a galaxy, but they're now the center of our Milky Way galaxy because they figured out a way through infrared light to get through all of that. When they're looking through the Milky Way this way, all that crap that's in there, they couldn't get through it to see to the core. But through infrared now they can get through that and they can see the core. And what they did to determine whether the Milky Way galaxy, our Milky Way galaxy, is in fact a black hole, is they studied the stars that were going around that center because they could see them now. And what they found out is the stars would go around and go shoo. So they were being flipped out of the center from the pull of the black hole in the middle. And they have now determined that our Milky Way galaxy is about 3 years old in science. And this is not for discussion as far as scientists go, that the center of our Milky Way is now a galaxy. The center of our Milky Way galaxy is a black hole. So there are vast spaces between, I mean, our universe, our Milky Way galaxy is 100,000 light years across. So traveling at the speed of light, it would take you 100,000 years to get across our galaxy, and we're a small galaxy. It's 10 times that between us and the next galaxy, which I believe is Andromeda. And it's, the distances are so vast, but there's stuff in there. There's all kinds of stuff in there. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And science is convinced. I'm not trying to express an opinion on this. I'm just relaying what science
No, it's just
says.
interesting though. Yeah, cool.
Well, we have to make sense of it somehow. You know?
Absolutely. We're going to have a question period at the end,
No,
by the way.
Tuesday this week had black holes.
There you go. I watched it.
We watched it. Yeah.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, when you go into a black hole, you can't get out the other side. The ones that are most active actually have stuff shooting out both ends. As opposed to this concept that you go into this black hole and you just disappear. And there's a backlog, backlog of all of these stars waiting to get into the black hole. But they can't fit in because it's like a funnel. Next. These were quotes, aside from after I found out from Brian Greene that the astronomers, I don't want to say astrologists because they're quite different, the astronomers, the science in astronomy, were convinced that we lived in an 11-dimension universe. I went back and started studying 11-dimension universes and found that scientists were actually saying this before Brian Greene, but it was never coalesced together as a scientific group. Gravity and the other three forces require 11 dimensions. These are scientists saying this. The final theory of quantum gravity requires 11 dimensions. 11 dimensions is the maximum dimensions that supersymmetry allows, resolving the mystery of why supersymmetry allows 11 dimensions. This is, by the way, you can research this, you can find there's much more information on this in the book, but science has determined that the universe is made of 11 dimensions. Then I thought to myself, this science versus philosophy thing was really starting to bother me, because I looked, when I studied people like Aristotle, who studied animals and stuff, and then you would study some of the ancients, everybody called them philosophers. They weren't scientists. But everybody today, they call scientists not philosophers. And that didn't work with me, because when I was reading the works of the ancients, I felt like I was reading science, particularly as most of the information they had already been backed up by our scientists. So philosophy is associated with learning and wisdom, and science is, this is the way they characterize in the dictionary. Philosophy is associated with learning and wisdom, and science is knowing and knowledge. So then, interestingly, in the dictionary, they described wisdom. So I looked up wisdom. Wisdom is described as philosophic or scientific learning or knowledge. So the dictionary is saying it's not this, it's not that, but when you look it up the other way, they're saying they're both one and the same thing. It goes into more detail in my book, but that's just a little thing that has always bothered me, the science and the philosophy. Ancient 11-dimensional knowledge. My research revealed that the Mayans knew about 11 dimensions. This is all in the book, and how they knew all this. The Aztecs knew about 11 dimensions. The Greeks knew about 11 dimensions. Freemasons talk about 11 dimensions. Early Christians talked about 11 dimensions. The Muslims talked about 11 dimensions. The Hebrews talked about 11 dimensions. And they were all aware of the universe, and they didn't always call them dimensions. Some of them, for example, Pythagoras called them 11 spheres. The Aztecs called them 11 heavens, and the Mayans. And so they're all speaking of the same thing, but they're all speaking of 11 dimensions. We have 4 dimensions here. I'm sure you're all aware of that. The 4 dimensions that we have here are up, down, left, right, backwards, forwards. That's kind of the 3D thing when we talk about it. I can see Chris, and I can see behind Chris. That's 3D. The other dimension we have on Earth is time. So we live in 4 dimensions. Those 4 dimensions are our 3D capacity to move freely in any direction, and time. The other 7 dimensions, we're not sure what they are. You may have heard the expression seventh heaven. That, I believe, is a reference to the 7 dimensions that are outside our dimensions. And some of those dimensions, I believe, we will be expanding on in our beings in the next little while. That we will go from a 4-dimensional person to maybe a 5 or 6-dimensional person. I don't know what those dimensions will be, but that's what I believe. Chapter 8, NASA's and NASA Clock 1111. This is the chapter I find my 1111. And I find it through NASA and the Mayans. I was asked by a co-worker one day at the dealership who was born on January 11th, and he wore a college ring with the number very clearly, the number 11 on it. And he kept seeing the number 1111. His name was Darren Roy. He asked me at one time when we were chatting, was 1111 a time? And if it was a time, was it good or bad? And that led to a discussion on various end time dates. And so he asked me about dates. I said Nostradamus had predicted 1999. Isaac Newton, when he was searching through the Bible code, predicted the date of 2060. And I told him the Mayan calendar ends in 2012, and a lot of people believe that's the date. And just